They're going to open it as an Odd Fellows and then introduce.
Okay, I'm just going to grab my stuff.
Okay. Check, check. Okay.
So that doesn't fall.
Okay. Check, check. Okay. Every time the fan blows.
Yeah, so I do have a stream, but I don't know if you guys have it. It's live right now. So
It is live?
it is live.
Okay. Well, good afternoon and welcome. On behalf of Susan's family, thank you for being here. We gather this afternoon to remember a remarkable woman, to celebrate the life she lived, and to give thanks for the many ways that she enriched the lives of others. Each of us comes with our own memories, our own stories, and our own emotions. Some of us knew Susan for decades, others for a shorter time. Some knew her through family, some through friendship, some through work, art, or the local community. Yet all of us are here because in one way or another our lives intersected with hers. This gathering is not primarily a time for grief, but for gratitude. It is an opportunity to reflect on a life lived with intelligence, curiosity, generosity, style, and joy. A life that found its homes among the beautiful redwoods of this coast. As we begin, let us simply be present to one another and to the memories we carry, grateful for the privilege of having shared, however briefly or however long, in Susan's journey. Our first reading is from Jenny Davis, Mary Oliver's Wild Geese.
Thanks. Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things.
I've been asked to say a few words about Susan. I did not have the privilege of knowing her personally. I know her instead through the stories that you share, through the love gathered in this room, and through one particularly meaningful fact. Susan chose to be an Oddfellow. The Oddfellows have long held three simple but profound ideals: friendship, love, and truth. Of these, friendship and love seem especially fitting for our gathering today because they are ultimately the measure of a human life. At the end of our days, we are not remembered primarily for our resumes, our possessions, or even our accomplishments. We are remembered because we entered the lives of others and left them changed. We are remembered because we loved and were loved, because we befriended and were befriended. As I learned about Susan, I was struck by how often certain themes appeared. Again and again, people spoke of her intelligence, her curiosity, her generosity, her warmth, her sparkling wit, hospitality, and her appreciation of beauty. She loved good food, good books, excellent art, and lively conversation, and good parties. These aren't merely hobbies or preferences. They are ways of saying yes to life. They are ways of participating in the world with attentiveness and delight. One sentence in her obituary especially stayed with me. In 1967, Susan set off on an adventure, as she put it, to travel around the world backwards. I smiled when I read that. I'm smiling now. It tells us something essential about her character. Here was a person with an adventurous spirit, a healthy independence, and a willingness to follow wherever curiosity led. Eventually, that journey brought her here to this coast, to La Honda, to her beloved sanctuary among the towering redwoods and abundant wildlife. For 55 years, she lived in a place she deeply loved, surrounded by longtime friends. We spend much of our lives searching for meaningful work, for community, for beauty, for belonging. Susan seems to have found all of these things and to have cultivated them with care. And friendship was at the center of it. Friendship is one of life's great gifts because it is entirely voluntary. Family is given to us, but friendship is chosen. Friendship says, your joys matter to me. Your sorrows matter to me. I want to walk beside you for part of this journey. Every friendship is an act of hospitality in which we make room for another person in our lives. The presence of so many memories and so many enduring relationships in this room is evidence that Susan practiced this art of friendship well. Then there is love. Love is often spoken of as a feeling, but perhaps it is more accurately understood as a form of attention. We love what we attend to. We give ourselves to what we consider worthy of our time, our care, our thought, our joy. By all accounts, Susan attended carefully to life. She attended to beauty. She attended to learning. She attended to friendship. She attended to conversation. She attended to place. She made her home not merely a residence, but a sanctuary. All those little sparkling candles. She cultivated not merely acquaintances, but enduring relationships. And such things do not happen by chance. They are intentional acts of love. Today, the sorrow is real because friendship and love were real. Yet grief is not the only thing gathered in this room. There is gratitude here as well. Gratitude that Susan lived, that she smiled and laughed, that she welcomed others into friendship, and that our own stories are now inseparable from hers. We mourn because Susan mattered, and we give thanks because she was here. A few moments ago, we heard the words of Mary Oliver. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Those lines seem especially relevant today. Susan's life was a journey. From Ottawa to Boston, from Toronto to California, from adventure to sanctuary, from exploration to belonging. She found her home among the redwoods and along this Pacific coast. There's a gentle lesson for all of us in Susan's example. A life need not be perfect to be beautiful. A life need not be extraordinary in the eyes of the world to be deeply meaningful. A good life may simply be one that remains curious, enjoys beauty, welcomes a good conversation, delights in friendship, loves generously, and at the end can honestly be said to have lived fully and joyfully. Susan's family has written that they take comfort in knowing she lived her full and joyful life on her own terms in a place she deeply loved. That's no small thing. Indeed, that's a wonderful thing. It's a life worthy of our gratitude, our remembrance, and our imitation. So may we honor Susan not only by remembering her today, but by carrying forward into our own lives some measure of her curiosity, her hospitality, her appreciation of beauty, and her gifts of friendship and love. And now I'd like to invite reminiscences from the friends and family, and you can begin, and you don't have to hold this on the stand if you want to take hold of it, if it feels more comfortable, and you can adjust it too.
Thank you. We have quite a few family members who are watching from Canada, and so I'm going to be reading a couple stories. This is going to be from Susan's brother, Bob, who's watching from Oakville right now. A celebration, the life of Susan Adrie CRUIKSHANK and her attitude of gratitude. To Susan's family, relatives, and California friends, I clearly remember her encouraging telephone conversations each Sunday when she shared with me how blessed and grateful she was for waking up each morning and looking through her skylight windows to see the towering California coastal redwoods and other lovely trees against the sky, living only 10 miles east of the Pacific Ocean. Driving her Prius from La Honda to her favorite stores and eateries west on the Pasadero Road and north on number 1 along the picturesque ocean shoreline to Half Moon Bay. Stopping on coastal roads by the ocean to watch the crashing waves and inhale the fresh ocean air. Visits with longtime California friends, enjoying her beloved home among the redwoods for over 55 years. In brief, I will miss Susan with her encouraging and thoughtful weekly telephone conversation. Sincerely, Robert Bob Maine Cruikshank, Susan's brother. I have another story, and then I'll offer to see if other people would want to come up as well. This is from Diana Edwards, and this is a memory that she wanted to share with everybody here today. Fall 1967. I was working for a real estate firm in San Francisco, and Susan's first husband, George, was working with our firm to earn his real estate license. One morning, Susan showed up at the office with George, said she was tagging along to see if real estate might be of interest to her, too. 4 hours later, Susan emerged from the conference room with a mischievous grin on her face. "Nope, not for me," she said as she approached my desk. "What do you do here?" That was the beginning of a friendship that lasted for nearly 60 years. Susan was assertive, creative, and always hardworking. Their San Francisco landlord agreed that she and George could move into a slightly larger but unpainted, dirty, and cluttered apartment for the same cost if she were to do the cleanup. Susan went to town with paint, fabric, and an eye for design. She sewed curtains, window seats, and transformed beaten-up tables into workable kitchen space with contact paper and paint. Truly, it was magazine-worthy. In the end, the landlord moved into the apartment himself, leaving Susan and George in their small, dreary apartment on the back side of the building. In her typically upbeat way, she said, "Not to worry, karma's always going to come around," a lesson in moving forward. Later, Susan transformed her house in the woods into a charming retreat. At my second wedding, she decked the halls of our home with masses of fresh flowers, filling almost anything that would hold water with stunning bouquets. She didn't do anything halfway. She celebrated birthdays, babies, and holidays with enormous energy. Her enthusiasm was contagious. She was a joy to remember. I will miss her holiday cards, always signed, "Love and Mistletoe, Susan." And I would welcome if anybody else would like to come up to talk. And you can grab the mic if you want, or very casual.
So Susan has been a dear friend of mine for many years. I think I first met her in the mid to late 80s through my late wife, Lynn. And she was like a little wood sprite living in the house in the redwoods. And it was just amazing. Her house was so magical, decorated to the nines, inside and out. And there was always a couple of cats twining between her legs. And on her front door was a twig wreath that radiated out from the visage of the knocker on the door, which just charmed the heck out of me. There were so many gatherings with Susan and old friends from La Honda over the years, including a concert at Rancho Nicasio, Marty and Ruth's wedding, a birthday party for Lynn at Kehoe Beach, a surprise gathering at La Honda at the Pottery, a visit to Santa Fe when Lynn's son David and Patricia renewed their vows, and the list goes on. So many over the years. While Lynn was being treated at Stanford Medical Center, Susan and her home offered a tranquil refuge between treatments. During Lynn's first remission, Susan came out to New Mexico, and we spent a marvelous morning watching and listening to elk bugle in what would become the Via Caldera National Preserve. And that was followed by a hike to the Jemez Falls that was also lovely. After Lynn died, Susan was one of several supportive friends that helped build new structure in my life. Many times I traveled across the bay to meet up with Susan, either at one of Aaron Torme's house concerts or at the Half Moon Bay Farmers Market, followed by brunch at one of her favorite restaurants. When I met Kim, Susan opened her arms and her heart and welcomed Kim into her group of coastal friends. Later, when Kim and I married, Susan was there to help celebrate. Receiving one of Susan's Christmas cards was always a treat and sometimes a challenge as you tried to decipher her great looping cursive script. It was missing that looping script with the hearts dotting the I's that led me to find her obituary just days after her passing. It's hard knowing that I'll never again hear Susan's eloquent voice saying, "My dear."
What a lovely room and so many happy faces. My name's Bibby Withers. I am Susan's cousin, and I have two sisters who have been in these pictures. We've been quite close and yet far apart. She lived here, I lived in Canada, in Toronto and then Vancouver, but we had a house in California. And my mother, who was also in some of these pictures, was down in California as well. And she would make a trek to Palm Desert to see my mother and stay with her. Mom didn't like being alone, so we had my cousins come to stay and my sisters, and John and I were in another house. But Susan made such an effort with my mother, and then with me. I was in Carmel and not going to be down in La Honda. It wasn't the way to anywhere. So she drove all the way up to Carmel to have breakfast with me. And it turned out that it was one of those days where the time change happened. It was a Sunday morning. And she all of a sudden realized that, and she was going to be late. And I don't know what kind of driver she was, but she made it in very good time. But she did make that effort to be with family. And I understand it now better because she had this room full of friends, but her family was very far away, and she valued the family. It was one of the more, I feel that I should have made a better effort with her, but I got busy with my own life. She's obviously been very busy, so now I feel a little better about that. But I do appreciate it. And I don't know whether the camera will show all these friends that showed up today and mentioned other people that were important to her. So as a family member, I am going to say thank you to you all. And a particular thankful to Jenny, who has done so much work to clean things up and to organize this. You've done a fabulous job, Jenny.
Hi, my name is David Hatt, and some of you might know me as David Chapeau. I've known Susan for about 30 years, and I remember what I like. It's nice. Susan has talked a lot highly of all of you, and it was so nice to meet you in person. I can see how she was touched by you, and through Susan, I've met many people. I met the Lindberghs. I met a late friend Daisy Spence, and now I know Alice. And we've been friends ever since, and I can see why everyone got along really well. I remember one incident, this is December 2001, we both happened to be in Paris at the same time. And so we had dinner that night. She was traveling with her friend Cleta. Anyway, so Cleta wasn't feeling well, so Susan and I had dinner in Paris in December. It was fun. And so Susan and I would have dinner 3 to 4 times a year, and then Alice would join us for the last 10 years. And it was always enjoyable. We had dinner at each other's homes, and we'd mostly meet in downtown Menlo Park at Bistro Vita. And I always remember Susan's effervescent spirit, how she always liked to say, no, help me with this, Alice, no something from the cheap seats. No complaints from the cheap seats. She said that every single time. So I'll remember that. So, Susan, no complaints for the cheap seats. Thank you.
Well, hello. I'm Patty Casper, and I know Susan because she was on my team at Syntax as an assistant when she first entered the clinical research world. And then she worked for a number of years, got her master's degree at night, worked full-time, got her master's degree at night, moved up in the clinical research field to, at least my level. Manager level. And then Syntax was bought out by Roche, and everybody had to scatter and get new jobs. And Susan moved on to various jobs, and I started a consulting business. And about 10 years in, I needed some help, and she was an independent consultant at the time. And so we went into pharmacyclics, and we were writing standard operating procedures. And we were doing a great job. We met with the managers and the team several times, and at one of the meetings at the end, one of the gals came over to me on the side and they said, well, you're doing fine, but we really kind of are, it's off-putting when Susan says, my dear. I said, well, that's kind of who she is, but I'll speak to her about it. So later, we had a debrief of the meeting, and we summarized what was going on, and I brought this to her attention, and she said, well, I'm so sorry. I'll keep that in mind, my dear.
Hi, my name is Alice Varga, and I've had the pleasure of working with Susan at a couple of companies. At first, when I was working at a company that was Geron, I saw that the person that I knew, Mary Ann, was going out to the movies all the time with Susan. Now, I'm not technically shy, but it took me a while to say, Mary Ann, can I come to the movies with you and Susan? And so the three of us became friends, and we would have dinner and go to the movies, and we really enjoyed it. Later, I worked with Susan again at a company called Oxygene, and I was the head of regulatory and quality there, and we needed a clinical person, and Susan was consulting. So we brought Susan in, and she worked with us for quite a while. Thoroughly enjoyed working with Susan, and we continued to have dinner and go out to lunch. And she would always remark about how beautiful it was here in the redwoods and near the ocean. And today, as I drove up along Route 1 and saw the Pacific Ocean to my left, I could do nothing but think of Susan and the joy that she got just driving down to meet me in Santa Cruz or driving anywhere along the Pacific Ocean. And as I'm watching all the pictures you have, that smile of hers is going to last forever.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Miller, so I'm sort of probably completing the biopharma cluster that knows Susan. Oh, yeah, so Allison, Patty, and I, and Susan, we had orbits that intersected every once in a while, and so I was trying to remember the name of the company where I worked for, and it was Oxygene. But we met through our clinical research professional organization, and she brought me in to work. I was consulting. I was at Syntex also, didn't know Susan and Patty at the time, but we met later and have crossed paths many times. I was fortunate enough to be invited to her home in the Redwoods, beautiful place, and sometimes we'd meet in Half Moon Bay for the farmer's market and on Saturday and then get lunch. I was living in Montero at the time. I'm in Pacifica now, and I had a family vacation, but when I got this invite, I scheduled so I could come back for this.
Oh, boy. Can you hear me? My name's Gail, and I'm one of Susan's art friends, not one of her smart friends, her art friends, okay? Let's be clear. I first met her about 22 years ago at the Kings Mountain Art Fair. And I was selling my jewelry there, and she bought jewelry from me. And that happened for a couple of years, and eventually we became friends. She came to my other shows, and we were friends, but in 2016, my husband died, and pretty soon after that, on Sundays, I started getting a phone call from Susan every Sunday, and it was like, it was very welcome, you know, the regularity and the support, and it wasn't until later that I realized I had really made it onto the special list of Susan, because later on, when I could tell you, I could talk about Susan for hours because I just know her so well. And every Sunday she called her family. Every Sunday. It used to be Saturdays with Bob. I don't know about you, Betsy, but Saturdays? Still Saturdays, but Bob switched to Sunday morning. So, but after we became really good friends, it wasn't just a weekend call. I swear we talked 2 or 3 times a week. I didn't write any of that down. Ugh. So, she loved the Kings Mountain Art Fair. I could tell you her whole ritual about going. Colleen, you went to the Kings Mountain Art Fair with her. She loved the Kings Mountain Art Fair, which for those of you that don't know, it's a local fair up here in the mountains. So then I think before I got on the call list, I got invited to stay at her house. And that is very special if you never got invited to Susan's house. The light, the famous lights, the twinkling lights, the candles, the whole aura of her house is just so charming. The redwoods coming up through the deck. It was just really a magical little house. And I should have done a list of fun facts about Susan, but I don't know how many people know. She lived in her house for 55 years. I think everybody knows that, right? Do you know that in all those years, she only had 2 housekeepers? Yes. 2 housekeepers in 55 years. I think that's astounding. She had her last hairstylist for 30 years. This doesn't happen in this day and age, and in 55 years in this tiny little house. Anyhow, but the candles, the string lights, she loved candles. So, yeah, I'm not following this at all. Okay. Her weekend routines. You could tell, she reminded me of my husband. You could look at the clock, look at the date, and know where Susan was. Sunday morning, where was she? Saturday morning, the farmer's market. Oh my God, one of her many happy places, but she loved the farmer's market. It wasn't a phone call that didn't go by that she didn't rave and rave about the farmer's market and Aaron. And I got to hear the story how when Aaron was really busy at the farmer's market, she still had time to give Susan a hug. And she loved that so much. But she adored the farmer's market. She adored coming to Half Moon Bay, her community. She loved shopping at Kathy's store. She loved shopping at, oh my God, what's Sheila's store name? Tokens. Tokens, yes, thank you. She loved shopping at Sheila's store. She loved Cunha's down the street. She bought her 4-poster bed on an antique store years ago in Half Moon Bay, and I couldn't find that woman to let her know about Susan. If anybody ever heard of Alta, and her, the woman's name was Alta, who owned this store on Half Moon Bay, and she and Susan were very close, but I couldn't locate her. So she loved her community. She loved her bookstore. She loved Sam's Diner every Sunday morning. 3-cheese omelet, hash browns, sourdough toast. She'd sit at the counter, and she got a little wink from the chef behind the thing, and oh my God, she loved that. She loved that. And the Oddfellows. Loved hearing about the Oddfellow dinners especially. I loved to hear about the food. She loved the Oddfellows, but of course what she and I shared pretty much was her love of jewelry, and that was a big part of our existence together. But you know, she really took it to an art form. I shared it with some book club ladies, but I seriously believe, I sell jewelry all the time to women. Nobody had Susan's eye for layering and looking at this piece and looking at this piece. And it was really astounding the way she could put together things, and she always looked so good, and it was always her style, and she just had a way with herself that was just Susan. It was just charming. How many things could you not love about Susan? I don't know. So, my notes are getting, yep. But what I didn't do a real good job here. But I just wanted to emphasize, Bob talked about her gratitude, and definitely gratitude and love were the big motivating factors in her life. She loved her farmer's market. She loved her book club. She loved the Oddfellows. She loved her community. All the stores I mentioned, she loved it. She loved her car. She had complete trust in GPS, like it came down from the mount. She trusted GPS like nothing. She loved her books. I tried to warn her, but she would not have it. No, she loved that, trusted that GPS when she'd come to my house. Her clothes, right? She loved her clothes. Dressed to kill pants. Oh my gosh, her signature attire. Her jewelry, her four-poster bed, and her French antique nutmeg grinder. She loved that little thing. She got it in Paris, and she loved cooking spinach with a little grind of fresh nutmeg. She loved it, loved it, loved it. And her Longchamp totes and purses. Loved to hear the story when she bought her first Longchamp in Paris, way before it was known. Okay, this is before it came to the United States, right? But most of all, she did love her house, and that was her happy place. That was her shelter, her 55 years. But if you talk to Susan, and she'd say, every morning I wake up, and out of one skylight I see an oak tree, and out of the other skylight I see a redwood. She goes, and I love it. I love this house every minute as much as I did when I first saw it. She goes, and I hope as long as I can drive my car, she said, I'll stay in this house. And I hope it's till the end. And she died in her four-poster bed.
I have a message from Susan's sisters, Barb and Betsy. Unfortunately, Barb, my mother, who's watching right now, is unable to be here today as she is the full-time caregiver for her husband. She sends her love and best wishes to everyone gathered here. We are grateful that Betsy and Bibby are here with us today to celebrate Susan's life. Susan was the oldest of the three sisters, which I'm sure you've seen lots of pictures and Christmas cards here that they don't love those Christmas cards, but I think they're hilarious. Yeah. And you can tell by Susan's face that she did not think they were fun. If you look at the one where they're posing, saying goodbye on the Air Canada flight, Susan's head's actually been cropped out she was not there, but her mother cropped her face and put it on the photo. So you can see there's a little bit of a line there. I'm sure she loved that. Susan was the oldest of the three sisters, though only by 19 months. Betsy was the baby of the family, and together they shared a lifetime of memories, adventure, and laughter. As a teenager, Susan was known for her distinctive hairstyle. She created her own version of the famous DA hairstyle, short for duck's ass. Her hair was slicked back on both sides to meet in the middle at the back of her head, creating a part that resembled a duck's tail. She wore it proudly and was the envy of her friends. Susan always took a great pride in her appearance. Her clothes were impeccably clean and carefully ironed. Barb often waited until Susan had left for school before borrowing one of those freshly pressed outfits. Needless to say, Susan was not particularly impressed when she found out. In the early 1980s, Betsy visited Susan when she was driving a bright red Volkswagen Beetle named Queen Victoria. Betsy recalls that her very first ride in the car was unforgettable. As Susan rounded a curve, the passenger seat, barely attached to the floor, shifted dramatically, sending Betsy sliding towards her sister. Susan's calm response was simply, just hang on to the door handle, you'll be fine. Adventure was always part of Susan's spirit. In the 1960s, she left her home in Toronto with dreams of traveling the world. While she may not have made it around the globe, she made it all the way to the West Coast, where she ultimately built a life she loved. On one visit to friends in Normandy, France, Susan encountered a minor obstacle. Her bank card stopped working. As many of you guys know, Susan loved to shop, and this was not a problem she was willing to accept. She spent her evenings passionately advocating her case to her Wells Fargo banker back home. Susan could be remarkably persuasive when she set her mind to something. She eventually resolved the issue and returned home with several wonderful purchases to show for her efforts. We spoke with Susan most weekends, and she always told us how fortunate she felt to live amongst the redwoods and to be surrounded by such wonderful friends. She truly appreciated the life she had built and remained grateful right to the very end. One of her favorite sayings was, as my mother would say, no complaints from the cheap seats. That phrase perfectly captured her outlook on life, practical, resilient, and sprinkled with humor. To all of you who were a part of Susan's life, thank you. Thank you for your friendship, your kindness, and the care you showed our sister over the years. Knowing she was surrounded by such a loving community brought great comfort to our family. Susan treasured her friends deeply, and we are grateful to each of you for helping make her life so rich and meaningful.
Thank you for those stories. I just want to be sure. Does anyone else want to say anything for the family on the live stream? You'll have a chance to mingle afterwards, but this is your chance to talk to the faraway. Okay.
Hi, my name's Marty. I was Noble Grand when Susan joined On Fellows. I didn't know her like you guys did. I just knew her here in this building about every 2 weeks or once a month when she would come to our dinners, our meetings, etc. But I really feel her loss. I'll never forget her, always smiling, always helpful, never ever bitching or moaning about anything. Just there to be there. And the Odd Fellows appreciate her so much, and we miss her very, very much. So that's about all I want to say, is that we cared about her as much as she cared about us. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Elaine, and I'm one of the book club members, so I'm speaking on behalf of all of us who met with her at least, well, some met with her more often than I did, but once a month at least I would get to see Susan, and at the farmer's market also, with her famous, "Hello, my dear," which I personally liked quite a bit. There's one thing I would say about her. You know, there's this expression, less is more. Susan didn't believe in that. More is more. More candles. More jewelry. You know, Coco Chanel once said that a woman should get dressed to go out, and before she left, she should look in the mirror and remove a piece. Susan would look in that mirror and go, I think I could add something to this. She was, as you all know, a wonderful woman. I didn't know her as well as many of you did, but my interactions with her were always wonderful, and she always had something good to say, as the last speaker mentioned. I never heard her bitch or moan either. There you go. We could all raise our hands on that. But I just wanted to say that all of us at the book club just really do miss her. She wasn't able to come quite as often towards the end, of course, but she always had something interesting to say. And should I tell you all the name of our book club? Yes. I need the book club people to agree to this, yes? This was something Susan liked too. We are the Clitorati.
I told you, I'm getting to know her through your stories, right? How charming, how elegant. We'll have a moment of silence after all of the words, and followed by some music. I was told that Susan liked classical music, and so we picked a French composer, Debussy. And after our moment of silence, we'll hear that music, and then another poem or a passage from Emily Carr before some closing words and the reception. So first, a moment of silence, and then we'll go from the moment of silence directly into the music and the reading.
I have a passage from Emily Carr. She's a prolific Canadian artist that I thought that Susie would like. What do these forests make you feel? Their weight and density, their crowded orderliness. There is scarcely room for another tree, and yet there is space around each. They are solemn, yet upliftingly joyous. You can find strength in them. How full of truth and reality they are, teeming with life, growth, and expansion. They are a refuge for countless living things. As the breezes blow amongst them, they quiver, yet how they stand still. Developing with the universe. From tiny seeds, they push close to the earth, then high toward the sky. Glowing in sunshine, bending with snow, rejoicing in wind and dew, sheltering birds, beasts, and all creatures who dwell within. A living testament to life's persistence, wonder, and resilience. Life is always better when you're living it for others, when you're open to the wild beauty of the world.
Thank you. This afternoon, we've shared stories, laughter, music, silence, and remembrance. Together, we've formed a kind of portrait, not only of Susan's accomplishments in life, but the qualities that made her life meaningful. Her curiosity, her warmth, her generosity, love of beauty, delight in friendship, and capacity to feel welcome. No complaints from the cheap seats, my dear. The passage we heard now reminds us that the forests endure because each tree grows not in isolation, but part of a living community. In much the same way, our lives are shaped by one another. The kindness we offer, the friendships we cultivate, the beauty we create, and the love we share continue long after a single life has ended. Susan understood that life is richer when it is lived with open eyes, open mind, and an open heart. She found joy in conversation, art, good food, laughter, and in the quiet beauty of the natural world. She made a home that was not only a place to live, but a place of welcome and sanctuary. May we leave today carrying not only the sadness of parting, but also the gratitude of having known her, perhaps a renewed commitment to notice beauty more carefully, to welcome others more generously, to cherish our friendships more deeply, and to live with the same attitude of curiosity, gratitude, and joy that Susan brought to the world. On behalf of Susan's family, thank you for coming, for your presence, for your memories, and for the love that has filled this gathering. May Susan's memory continue to be a blessing in the lives of all who know her. And now, enjoy the good food, good conversation, laughter, as Susan would have.